Welcome to the Charles Vanhorn Show. Today is July the 1st, 2020. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. If you like my podcast, please hit the subscribe button in YouTube. Today I have the honor of hosting two of my friends, Josh Flores and Antoine Bell. They are geniuses in their own right, and I am honored that they accepted my request to appear on my podcast. Today I want to begin the conversation on race and probably end it on politics or religion. So I'm going to open the floor and throw this first question at Antoine, and Josh, you can follow up. Why has the race factor or the race agitations that we're experiencing in the United States caused so much tragedy? And what can we do to change the future of race relations in this country?
Well, Charles, first, thank you for the opportunity to join you on the podcast this evening. Genius, not so sure.
Yeah, you're a genius, brother. Trust me, you're a genius.
As far as the issues surrounding race here in the United States, I think it goes way back to its beginnings and its origins, and without going too far in depth about the reasons for it, I believe a lot of it comes from fear and misunderstanding. When African Americans were brought over on slave ships for over 400 years ago, I don't think that there was ever any intention of anyone that wasn't white to advance within the society. It was supposed to be, maintaining your space, and what your job was to just be subservient. And things have changed, for the best. And I think recently what has happened has really turned attention to a lot of what's been avoided as far as conversations here in the nation regarding race, racism, and how different classes and races, cultures are treated rather badly, here in this country. What gives me hope, and seeing you mention about what can we do to change the future, is to have conversations, have uncomfortable conversations about race. And I think what has happened recently that has not been happening, and I'll turn it over to Josh after this, is that white people are starting to have conversations among themselves. I think that, as far as black people are concerned, you can look at pictures from the 30s, 40s, 50s, even the 60s, and then flip the script over into the 2000s, and the demonstrations and protests almost look like instant replays over the last 50 to 100 years. Except now it's different in that there are more allies, I think there's more participation by white people that are tired of seeing it themselves, and they're starting to have those tough conversations within their own race about, hey, how do we stop this? How do we move forward? How do we erase what has happened in the past and move forward into the future?
Right, exactly. Josh, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely. I like this question because I think I have such conflicting views on this question, or just a conflicting opinion on this. Like, on the one hand, I think of it as a personal, like, what can I do personally about this? The easy answer would be, I can hold people accountable. I can call people out. Like, I've been saying a lot, like, we should be addressing people who are spreading false narratives or just misinformation on social media, for instance. Correct. Like, especially if they're family members. I've called out a few family members, and that has definitely ruffled feathers on my side of the family. They always go and message my parents, and I have to hear from them. Like, your uncle, oh, sorry, he was spreading nonsense.
That's right.
But then I think about, I am inspired by people like Daryl Davis. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't.
He's a black musician who's well known because he has made friends with KKK members.
Oh, yes.
Extensive conversations, and they will give him their KKK robes after they've renounced their beliefs. And that's like such an inspiring thing to do. But I know that me personally, I don't have that kind of patience or kindness anymore. I think I just want to hold people accountable. And then I guess that's my conflict is like individuals, we can do a lot, but we can also do a lot of harm. So I always got to watch myself, like, and how emotional I can get when confronted with racism or just ignorance.
Correct.
And, you know, any negative isolated incident can do a lot of damage. And, but that's a paranoia that I was raised with. It's a burden I was raised with, that people are always waiting for me as a Mexican to make a wrong move and to fit into a racist stereotype and then prove somebody right, that saying, oh, look at him, he represents all Mexicans and look how he messed up, they're all like that. And it's an exhausting burden. And I think that's part of the reason why I have this conflict and I'm so impatient, specifically with adults, which goes into my stance on being a professional. So as a professional, I think I have a totally different responsibility, and it is my responsibility as a professional educator when I can think about my privilege of working with students and teachers and my responsibility of working with students and teachers. There's a lot of work that I can do and impact by just teaching literature and introducing diverse concepts and diverse authors through my professional outlets, I guess you could say. Like I do remember a time, it was in 2016 actually, when I went and co-taught in Tahlequah, Oklahoma with a friend. And immediately after the lesson that we co-taught, I was approached by 3 Hispanic students, and they had never seen a Hispanic male teacher before. It's always been white and female. And we had a great conversation. They had so many questions. And I remember them saying how they were scared coming to school because they're afraid their parents are going to be picked up by ICE, whether they were documented or undocumented immigrants, I don't know, but they had this fear every day they came to school, and I had no answers for them.
Wow.
But it, you know, all I could do is show them, like, you can get a lot done in academics. Like, you can be a teacher. There's lots of options for you. And I think that's a responsibility we hold when we show that you can do something like you know what? Really quick anecdote. I just read the book Black Privilege by Charlemagne the God, and he has a great quote in there that he says, you know, for young African Americans, relatable images of success are limited to sports and entertainment. So too many times, students or kids' dreams are not really their dreams. They're just someone else's dreams, and they have to think that's their options that they have to chase.
Wow, that's amazing. That is very amazing.
Just the perception of what is available out there for kids of any culture that's not white. It's put in a box. You know, as far as African Americans, the idea is put into a lot of young people's minds that unless I'm an athlete or an entertainer or a rapper, that's my only shot. That's my only shot to be successful. So that's what I have to shoot for. And the lack of having those images that are out there that will show young kids a doctor is cool. Being president of the United States is cool. We've had a president of the United States that, you know, was a pretty cool guy. He wasn't a nerd. He wasn't there wasn't that negative image. And I think a lot of what we are missing throughout our country is the education and getting to know each other as individuals. You know, having that opportunity to know each other's story. And our education system has been so distorted for so long that I'm 55 years old and I'm still learning some history that I should have known long ago as a child. So that needs to be fixed, and then we just need to get to know each other. I mean, that's everybody across the board.
That's right. I was watching the news just a few days ago, and it seems that people are so angry right now. They are so angry that they seem to forget that almost everything is being recorded. I have watched people spew vitriolic words towards people they deem as insignificant. And for some, that single act has been very costly. Some have lost their jobs, their relationships with their significant others, and their standing in the communities. I believe the emotions of our country is real raw right now. And we are almost like the Walking Dead. We are in a nervous state. We're afraid that if we approach someone that they're going to say the wrong thing, they're going to do the wrong thing. We're just walking on eggshells right now because of what is going on. And we have someone who is continually fueling the blaze. He's really not trying to put out the fire or to calm the situation. And the president of the United States, who identifies as a nationalist, I say he's a white nationalist, he pits Americans against each other. He does a little nudging here with an elbow here, or a little pushing and prodding here, a few racist remarks there, and he sits back and watches the fight. So Josh, I'm going to throw this next question at you, and I want you to speak on this issue, and Antoine, you can jump in when he finishes, and we'll just have another good discussion like we did on that last question, and we'll go from there. I want you to discuss, Josh, I know it's not on the front pages of the New York Times or the local newspapers. It's not on headline news anymore, but last year we were shown pictures of families who had crossed the border into the U.S., families that were separated when they crossed the border. We saw kids in cages. We saw young people in cages. We even saw horrific pictures of some who had lost their lives while trying to escape the hell that they were in, only to arrive here and face a different kind of hell. So Josh, elaborate on that a little further, if you don't mind.
I'll do my best. I think that, first off, I'll say that I think we know and we already knew exactly what not to do. And the one thing we should not do is to ever separate families and put a bunch of kids in cages and separate them from their parents. And the next thing is enough with the wall business. Like that, this just seems like such a waste. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's effective at all. And then like the third of all, this is a bigger issue, is I think we have to talk and just change the narrative about immigrants.
Yes.
I think so often you hear about the immigration problem and it lumps up too many people when we need to talk about documented immigrants and undocumented immigrants. And then what are the hurdles that are constantly being pushed and created to keep people undocumented?
Wow. And
we don't talk enough about, I think we talk a lot about the burden they have on the economy, but I don't think that it's ever an accurate thing.
Correct.
And so if we want to talk about, if we want to like put economics ahead of our humanity, then fine, let's talk about economics ahead of our humanity. And the research that I was looking at ahead of us talking shows that, well, actually, even undocumented immigrants, to be fair, they cost more for the U.S. immediately, but in the long-term investment, they are a good investment in the economy because they create jobs.
Yes.
And they spend money in the economy, and that's just a fact. They also help other businesses. Correct. Because of the labor, unfortunately, and they could probably be an even bigger investment in the economy if there weren't so many hurdles to become a documented citizen of America. So that's kind of my spiel on that.
That's real good. And another thing, Josh, they pay taxes. People forget that they pay taxes, but really, we hardly ever hear of the good that they are doing for the U.S. It's always the negative. No. Always. To your
point, like the president, he pushes out the violence aspect of it.
Correct.
Which it's so funny. This is where I get so upset about the hypocrisy of it. But like the violent aspect of it is such a slim number, and it pales in comparison to the violence between documented American-born citizens creating violence with each other.
Yes.
And yet that's, those statistics are what's used against us when I see a lot of the all lives matter and the police brutality. They talk about, well, the black on black crime is a lot higher than police brutality. It's like, no, that's not the point.
Correct.
You're trying to use statistics against me, but you're missing the point entirely, and it's the hypocrisy that I get really aggravated with.
Yes. Antoine, would you like to comment on that?
I think and this is, of course, we've had conversations about, this subject, and especially when it's dealing with the president and his rhetoric and his feeding his base. And I give him credit for this. He's the best leader of a pep rally of rabid fans that you've ever seen.
Yes,
it has nothing to do with doing the job. He has been basically stoking everything that is dark here in this country. And it begins with the fear of the unknown, of people that are different than you are. And as Josh said, and I'll piggyback off of that, having Mexican citizens to come over to the United States, we're supposed to be a melting pot. We're supposed to have our arms open for people that are different to come to us. And even though it's said, that they want, immigrants to come, but they want them to do it the right way. Well, I mean, if you go back in our history, the Mexicans are the only ones that have come here undocumented and been accepted and are doing very well, thank you.
That's right.
The only difference is they're not brown skinned. And I think the majority has a fear to spread the garbage, and I just call it garbage, that it's a bunch of murderers and rapists and criminals. I do a lot of research into serial killers, and don't let that frighten you guys, but I just like to know, what makes people tick.
I'm getting a little afraid now, Antoine.
I
do it
want to
for
know
research, right?
When if I start seeing somebody acting quirky, there's this guy has.
You let us know, though, okay?
I want to know before the body count goes up. Okay. But throughout U.S. history, just look at who are the traditional serial killer, and who are the ones that pile up the big body counts. It's not someone that came over the border. So I refuse to buy into that fear of the threat from the South, because I'm still wondering whatever happened to that big fearsome caravan that was coming out of there. Remember the caravan?
Never materialized.
Did the caravan get beamed up? Did Scotty pick them up on the way or something? All of a sudden, no caravan. All that fear stoking that was going on and fear mongering, it's gone now. And I believe a lot of it is feeding, the huge percentage of it is feeding the fear of a certain base in order for the president to keep his job, which is the power. He feeds off of the power that he wants. He don't really want to do the job. I believe that deep in my heart. He don't want to do the job, but he loves the limelight. He's a game show host. And he loves being in front of people. He wants to be loved. He wants to be adored. And that's why he continuously has been on the campaign trail ever since he won the last election. He started campaigning again.
Right. He did.
So, and he would do whatever it takes to, in his mind, get the votes in November for him to get 4 more years. So that just has to stop, and the only way that it can is that people come together and do what needs to be done in November.
Yeah, we really wouldn't have an immigration problem if the Congress just went ahead and did its job. But usually they use this as a hot tamale to just keep tossing it back and forth, never really trying to solve the problem, because it's a good campaign issue to run on. So instead of them resolving this, they could, trust me, they just let it fester year after year and never really tackle the problem. But as I was thinking again about, the kids who were in cages, my heart was just really heavy, because we still don't know exactly what is happening to those people who cross the border. The last time we heard, they were going to be sent back, but we haven't had an update from the administration as to what is being done to resolve the issue. And it seems like if it's not a hot issue anymore, the news, it moves on, and there really is a forgotten issue. And I really am concerned that the situation probably has worsened, and there is no one there putting eyes on that situation to see what is really going on. My last question is this, and I think about all of the elected officials who run for public office, and they make a lot of campaign promises. They say you can count on me when I get in there. I'm going to not be beholden to Washington. I'm going to go in and clean up the swamp. I'm going to make reform my number one issue. I'm going to make sure that we work together and that we do it for the good of the American people. Usually when they get in, they're sidetracked by lobbyists. They're usually caught up in some type of investigation because they have taken money from somebody that they shouldn't have taken money from. And usually a scandal starts to brew. And instead of these people actually going to Washington to help their constituents, they go there to enrich themselves. So my question is this, and any of you, either one of you can start the answer on this. What types of reform is needed to hold elected officials accountable to their constituents? And do you favor term limits for the House and for the Senate?
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I will say that, I was listening to one of your older podcasts. I think it was the Corrupt Politics episode.
Yeah.
And
yes.
The way you described, your interpretation of how, government and politics works, it gave me a little bit of a traumatic remembering, a little PTSD of when I used to work at the State Department. I worked at the State Department of Education, but I was often, working with the communications department and phrasing and trying to help get stuff passed and understood by a lot of senators and House of Reps, and getting pushback from them and dealing with that and getting to know politicians and particularly how their egos work. I mean, it was very accurate, even though I was just working at the state government, but that episode was a good one.
Thank you.
But it reminds me just, what types of reforms are needed to hold them accountable. It's, right now the bar is so low for holding politicians accountable.
It is.
So it's
It really
really, really tough. And I think that, sometimes we can try to change things too fast. And I'm ready for change. I want things to change fast. But I think that for some of these people, especially the constituents of certain groups, it's almost like you got to really be careful on your word choice, because they will get really scared over some words, and those words will get twisted. So you have to think really hard. And that's one thing I remember working in government and helping with messaging is you don't want to change too much too fast, because you will scare them and you will get pushback, sometimes aggressively and violently. If you try to change things too fast. I even remember in high school going to prom with some girls. It was, I'm sure, their grandparents who referred to me as, the colored boy who took their granddaughter to prom. To them, they thought they were pretty progressive allowing that to happen. So some of the changes we're demanding now, the taking down the Confederate monuments, which I totally support. Now they're just freaking out. It's like, okay, now that's gone too far. It's too fast, too many changes. They can't handle it. But I don't know, other than voting, how else do you hold them accountable? Wow. I wish I had more of an answer than that.
What you think, Antoine? I'm a real skeptic when it comes to our voting system here in the country. And sometimes I look at the popular vote and how it would be just amazing if everything was based on one vote and it counted. But then when you look at the presidential election, you go through the electoral college, and then everything is skewed. It's just thrown out of the window, and it doesn't matter how many people voted, because if the person won the state, it doesn't matter about the popular vote. So it seems almost like a rigged system, and sometimes I don't even know if voting is enough, because it seems like these people, they get into these positions and they believe that they're supposed to be there until they die, and they forget about really the obligation that they took, and the oath that they took to be working for the American people. So what you think about that, Antoine?
I'll address this question twofold. First of all, term limits, absolutely. I am a proponent of that. I know I often wonder how with the Supreme Court that a judge can get on the Supreme Court and stay there until they die.
Yeah.
I don't think in this country that is a viable way to go with any position, because it leaves too much room for complacency. When someone has been in a job and automatically just feels like, well, I'll just be here until I don't want it anymore. And that whatever put them in place in the first place may lose, they may lose their way. And I just don't think that that going the direction of this forever once you're in the seat until I don't understand that really. And I think that every position should be up for election after a certain amount of time. And that's across the board. I don't know. I just don't understand that. But now, as far as the political system as it stands and voting, I'm trying very hard to hold on to the belief that our system of selecting our public officials and politicians to represent us is actually a good system, and that I should have faith in it. Right now, I mean, we live in the state of Alabama, and I will go and vote every time there is an election out, whether it be a major election or a local election. For me, it's personal because I was born on March the 7th, which was Bloody Sunday. A lot of people went through a lot of hell for me to have the right to go out and cast that vote. But when I'm standing in line, honestly, I don't have a lot of confidence that my vote makes a difference, because as long as this state is red, I mean, think about when Doug Jones won. It took an opponent that was completely ludicrous,
just flawed,
in order for terribly flawed,
yes,
for Doug Jones to win a close race here in this state. And it's frustrating when it comes to election time. Just wondering if your vote will actually count. And I don't have a lot of trust in our system. The electoral college needs to be done away with. It takes away the power of the popular vote. And until that has some viability, I just don't trust it. I don't trust it at all. With everything that's going the way it should be right now, if you look at the country as it is before November, there is absolutely no way that Donald Trump should even have a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way he should have a chance to be reelected. But deep in my heart, I just don't know. I just feel like that they'll find a way to steal it, and it just won't be an honest election. And I mean, just look at your voting precincts now that are being closed all over the place.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
It is.
And it's in the areas that will mostly affect how many votes that Republicans get. And it just doesn't, it's not fair. I feel powerless. And I just don't know. I'm like Josh. I just don't know what can be done. I mean, I'm just one voter. Someone that has a small voice, and unless there are a lot of collective voices that get together and can make a difference, I just don't know. It's pretty disheartening.
Yeah, I second that, and it seems like it gets worse every 4 years. It seems like one party works hard to make it difficult for other people to vote. And it seems like they put up all type of obstacles in the way so that they can make this voting process even more strenuous than what it is. People having to stand in lines for hours just to vote. I wonder what happened to the paper and pen concept, or the paper and pencil concept. What happened to that? We now have become paralyzed by the electronic devices, and sometimes you don't know what's going on the back end of that. If someone is rigging the vote, you don't know if someone is manipulating the vote. So I have really no faith in the system. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not as optimistic as you are, Antoine. I have no faith in it because I believe that a lot of the votes are not counted, and that we are just going on the hope that it's being fair. But I do believe that a lot of times there's a lot of shenanigans going on with our election process. You guys have anything else you want to comment on before we get ready to wind this thing down?
I don't think I answered the second part of that question, but I would say that I think familiarity breeds comfort, and so I'm also in favor of term limits.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. I think term limits should be there, and I'm all in favor for that. But we're just three guys talking on a podcast. 3 votes. 3 votes.
I think that the only thing I would like to add as far as the political process and politicians is that I hope before I die, that I will actually see elections that will actually have representatives of the people and not just career politicians that are just giving us these different commercials and trying to have the taglines and the gotchas. They talk more about why this guy shouldn't be instead of why should we want you in the office? What can you do for the people and not for just a small portion of the people that they're trying to play to?
Correct.
And I haven't seen that in my lifetime. I had hope when Barack Obama was in there, and I heard, yes, we can. And I think a lot of people had some unrealistic expectations of him.
Exactly.
Because the process, they don't know about the political process and how, unlike what we have now, where you have someone that's a wannabe dictator that's in there that just says, well, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Autocrat.
You do have an autocrat that's in there now, or he wishes he was, and he's done a lot of damage with that. But the government is supposed to be for the people, selected by the people. Correct. And I'm hoping that one day we will actually see that.
Well, that's my hope as well. I hope one day we finally reach that point where we can actually be just one nation. One nation.
Yes. Part of what makes the United States what it is the beauty of its diversity and cultures, different people from different places. If I have to say that there's, outside of college football, the thing that I love the most about living in this country is that there's just so many different types of people that if you just get out and get to know different cultures, visit different places.
You can learn a lot.
You can learn a lot, and you find out, that's where your education can be. Forget what you learn in the classroom.
Yes.
Leave your front yard.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, this has been a great discussion on current events, and I truly enjoyed this. And I want to personally thank you again, Antoine and Josh, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be on this podcast. Hopefully this won't be the last one that you participate in. And with that being said, I'd like to thank all of you who listen and subscribe to my podcast. So until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and stay engaged.